Dr. Naresh Agarwal, Associate Professor, Simmons University, Boston, and all the dear participants, a very good evening to you all. I, Professor Preeti Mahajan, on behalf of the Department of Library Information Science, Punjab University, Chandigarh, and on my own behalf, welcome you all in the 21st webinar, which is in fact the last one in the current webinar series being hosted by the department on the theme Information Generation, Dissemination and Use during COVID-19 lockdown. The webinar series have been organized at a time of extraordinary situation emerging out of the global pandemic and the consequent lockdown when almost everything has come to an abrupt halt throughout the world. In such a situation, when online meeting had become a new normal in all activities, be it education, business, social functions, or any other sphere, we at the Department of Library Information Science also tried our level best to convert the COVID-19 lockdown challenge into an opportunity to connect to the LIS students, research scholars, and the professional colleagues for their intellectual well-being. Therefore, we organized a series of lectures by eminent experts in LIS field to utilize the period of lockdown in productive academic activity and enhance the professional knowledge of our attendees. Now, I take this opportunity to introduce the speaker of the webinar today. We have amongst us Dr. Naresh Agarwal, who is an associate professor at the School of Library Information Science at Simmons University, Boston. Born and brought up in Sikkim, he spent 14 years in Singapore before joining Simmons University. He earned his PhD from the National University of Singapore's Department of Information Systems, School of Computing. Prior to entering the doctoral program at National University of Singapore, he worked for 6 years in technology roles in voice-over IP, bioinformatics, and digital cinema industries. His research areas include information behavior and knowledge management. His teaching area include technology for information professionals, theories of information science, web development and information architecture, evaluation of information services, etc. He has delivered a number of keynote and invited addresses at various workshops and conferences in several countries. He has held various leadership positions at the Association of Information Science and Technology and has helped them start its South Asia chapter. He has been nominated for President-elect Association of Information Science and Technology 2020 and has received many awards, including James M. Tasler's Leadership Award in 2015, Regional Chapter of the Year Award 2014, New Leaders Award 2013, etc. He is on the editorial boards of many international journals, including Wiki Journal of Humanities, Journal of Information and Knowledge Management, International Journal of Knowledge, Content Development and Technology, Journal of Knowledge and Communication Management, International Journal of Information Services and Technology, International Journal of Information Research, and has also edited special issue on learning in low-tech, information-rich environments, information and learning sciences. He has authored 22 journal articles, 26 refereed articles in conference proceedings, 1 refereed book, 1 edited conference proceeding, 2 refereed book chapters, 10 refereed short papers and posters. Besides, he has published some poems as well as stories. His book, Exploring Context and Information Behavior, Seeker Situations, Surroundings, and Shared Identities, was published in 2018. In the same year, he started an initiative called Project Oneness Word, to gather human stories through interviews to inspire other human stories. Currently, he is working on a book which includes about 25 journeys of Indian students who went to study in Singapore and are now excelling in different fields. Today, Dr. Agarwal would be speaking on disinformation generation, dissemination and use, COVID-19 and beyond. May I now request Dr. Agarwal to familiarize us with the concept of disinformation, its generation, dissemination, and use pre and post COVID-19. Dr. Agarwal, please.
Let me share my screen.
Yeah, yes, you can.
Yeah. Can you all see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Mahajan. That was a lot, I think, for the audience to gather at one point. And but thank you, and I'm really glad to be able to come to Punjab virtually. I think I've been to Amritsar many years ago. That I think it was around 2007 or so, and I greatly enjoyed and loved the city. And but I have not been to Chandigarh, so I think I just messaged one of my relatives over there saying that I'm giving this talk, and he said, "Welcome to Punjab, if not in person, but at least online." So thank you for this welcome. And so I just when I had to think of a topic for this talk, I just the theme was information generation, dissemination, and use, and I was more interested in the dis part in terms of talking about disinformation generation and dissemination and use. So when we talk of disinformation, it is about information that is incorrect and that we get to see a lot in social media and in our messaging that we see. And a lot of it has happened before the COVID-19 crisis and during the crisis as well. And I'm sure it will continue to be spread much into the future. And it is about how do we separate the fake from the fact. So thank you. My name is Naresh Agarwal. So here you have my email ID, which is agarwal@simmons.edu. And that's my web address, web.simmons.edu and /tilde Agarwal. And that's my Twitter handle at Naresh AG. So those of you who are here could join. And that's my university seal. It was started in 1899. And yeah, we have completed like more than 120 years or so. And it started as a women's college in Boston, especially for undergrads. So there's a school of social work, nursing, and library and information science. So it was a lot of the women's professions, and of course, then later it went on to MBA and computer science and all of those. So this is where we are right now. I'm connecting from Boston, and and my hosts are in Chandigarh, and many of you are connecting from different parts of India and from different cities. So so this is the distance in terms of physical distance, but in terms of connectivity and emotional distance, I'm sure that's not so much. And that's my university, and this is the building where I have my office on the third floor. Now it's just moving to the second floor because we're doing some reorganizing, and there's a huge new tower that's going to come up in the place of this this science center right now. So it's a small campus, but nice and beautiful in the heart of Boston downtown. And that's the entrance to my office building during fall. It's very beautiful that time. The leaves are all either green or red or orange or yellow. And I was born and brought up in the tiny state of Sikkim, which is the 22nd state of India. And this is a mountain lake in the northern part of Sikkim, Gurudamar. And this is Tashinamgal Academy, the school that I studied in Gangtok. And then from 1995 onwards, I had the opportunity to go to Singapore. So this is just a view of Singapore. And this is where I studied, which is Nanyang Technological University. So I was there from 1995 to 1999. And after that, I graduated, worked in the industry for 6 years. It was primarily in Singapore as a software engineer, for a few months in Hyderabad in India, and then a few months in Silicon Valley in California as well. And after that, I went back to doing my PhD at the National University of Singapore, and that was at the School of Computing. But my research area was more in information systems and information science, which, as you know, you're from the Department of Information Science, is a field that encompasses three aspects. That's how I like to describe it. Asking people to imagine a triangle, and then you have the human aspect on one side and information on the other side. So it is mostly the interaction between people and information when we think of information science, but it's also mediated by technology a lot, because a lot of our interaction, even right now, this webinar over Cisco WebEx, this is over using technology. So this space where we have humans, information, and technology, whatever interactions happen of different sorts, that we can think of as information science. Of course, information can take different forms. can take the form of data, it can take the form of knowledge. And today we'll be talking more about how information can take the form of misinformation and disinformation, fake news, rumors, and so on. And the phenomena could be different. You could be talking about different kinds of phenomena in this interaction. It could be for different contexts. One of the contexts could be for COVID-19 and lockdown and other things, but there could be various reasons why this interaction happens between people and technology and information. So if I were to describe the research space, at the heart of it is the actor or the user, and it could be a person who is joining a webinar right now at different time zones, typically at in the evening past 7 p.m. Or in my case, it will be like early morning here at quarter to 10 right now almost. And it could be a conference attendee, a working person, a student, a child, or any other. So basically any person like you or me. And there's Professor Brenda Derwin who came up with a sense-making methodology. And she's a retired professor now at the University of Ohio in Columbus. And she likes to describe this person as a body, mind, heart, and spirit moving through time and space with some past dreams, present reality, and future ambition. And so this person is trying to navigate and make sense of the world, right? So it's often messy. So we have some thoughts in our mind, and some thoughts are not so clear. So we are trying to be loved, we're trying to be accepted, we're trying to fit in, and also we're trying to stand out. This is the messiness of the human beings that we have. And often, uh, when we think in terms of research, we try to think in terms of people from that city or people from in that profession or people from or doctors or lawyers or information behavior of certain kinds of people. So we try to slot and stereotype people into certain categories. And that's often a fallacy because we are often trying to make sense of the world in our own different ways. So this person often has a need for information. That need can come from work. It can come from curiosity. You just want to know what happens in the webinar, or you want to know what you want to solve some problem in a daily work for something that you want to study. Maybe you're preparing for a UPSC exam or something. So it could be a need that's brought about by a study, by a work or anything. And when that need arises, you start looking for information. And this process of seeking could be from your friends or colleagues. It could be from books and manuals that you might borrow from a library. And then it could also be online through computer-based systems, through Wikipedia, through doing a Google search, through going to various resources online. And you could look for this information either face-to-face from colleagues, from a reference librarian in a library, or from a teacher or a friend or a colleague or a student. Or you could be interacting with people via technology, whereby it could be through smartphones and through laptops, tablets, and desktops, and so on, and also through the various messaging platforms and social media. And sometimes we find information serendipitously when we're not really looking for it. We just find something and we had not really expected that. And when that happens, we have like a brief aha moment when we get that information without really expecting it to find. So this entire cycle, the various ways in which information might come about, fulfills our need to some extent. We try to make sense of what we have found. Some things make sense to us, some things don't, and we try to ask more questions. And if it's Google, we'll try to refine a query search. We'll go to the second, third, fourth page, and this cycle sort of continues until a point where not really all our questions are answered, but we might feel that that's enough for now, and we get tired, or we decide to give up for that moment. And there are also times when we avoid information. For the past 2 years or so, I've been doing research on what happens when people don't respond to your text messages on WhatsApp or your Facebook Messenger and so on. What is the impact to the person who is sending the message? How do you feel being avoided in that sense? And also, what are the feelings on the recipient side? So the paper on the sender thoughts and feelings has just been accepted for the ASIST 2020 annual meeting, which is the Association for Information Science and Technology's annual conference. And then the receiver side is what is the impact on the receiver. So this entire thing can be called brought under the cycle of human information behavior. And I also study knowledge management. That is a related area, but rather than looking at this phenomena from an individual point of view, we look at it from an organization's point of view. So imagine an organization which could be a library, archive, or any other place that you're working, any company, any school, any university, whereby all the knowledge that is held in people's head walks into the doors of that institution at say 9 in the morning or whatever time the institution opens, and then walks out at 5 or 6 or whatever time it closes. So how can you retain the knowledge that's held in people's heads beyond that time now, time while they are there? So even when people leave, sometimes people pass away, that knowledge is lost. So how can that knowledge be shared and retained? And how can you create a culture within an organization where knowledge is easily created, shared, and then transferred to the right person at the right time, and in a way where it can be used to facilitate decision making? So all of that is concerned in the field of knowledge management. And I also study context. So context is what gives rise to this information need. But context is much more complex than that. There's a lot of nuances to it. So this was the book that I wrote, in which earlier Professor Mahajan had mentioned. So this was a book on exploring context in information behavior. So I had painted this cover in watercolor, but the idea is to look at the story of the elephant and the six blind men that we have, and the story is originated from India, and how the blind men have different ideas about who the elephant is, whether it is somebody looks at the tail and says that the elephant is a snake, and so on. Somebody looks at the legs of the elephant and says it's a tree trunk. So that's how context is as well. Depending on our different understandings of things, we try to have different ideas of what it is or what it is not. So that is the book, and this was just a link to the book on Amazon and by the publisher. So let's get to our topic today, which is talking about disinformation, dissemination, generation, and use in COVID-19 and beyond. So that's the phenomena. So for the last few years, especially when we look online, these terms have become very well known. Disinformation, propaganda, misinformation, satire, misleading, deliberately misleading, social, internet, and fake news, propaganda, web traffic, hoax, busted, a lot of those kinds of terms, yellow journalism, morality. So you see different variations of these terms used in different contexts. So one of the things is that it is especially concerning, and this was a quote on March 30th, after a month of about COVID-19 becoming quite widespread, especially in the US, and it soon came to India as well right after that. So in any kind of crisis, misinformation abounds. So these were some claims that were made that COVID-19 can be cured by ingesting fish tank cleaning products, and there were some people who said that this was developed in Chinese labs, purposely developed in Chinese labs, or some people on the other side said it was developed in American labs or French labs, and there were other news media which was all false, saying that how Ronaldo, the player, the football player, has tested positive, or how the Pope had tested positive to coronavirus. Of course, there were other well-known people, the UK Prime Minister, and then Tom Hanks and all, they had tested positive, and Prince Charles had gotten it as well. But there were other people who hadn't. So how do you make sure that what is real, what is not real, what is true, what is not true? So that is a big problem at a time when we think that technology has really democratized information, and we have all of this information in our fingertips on our phone, through Google, through Facebook, and through all our social media contacts. So on the one hand, it's very liberating to have this huge amount of information presented to us very easily. But on the other hand, not being trained to think critically, not being trained to identify what is true, what is not true, and to identify what is real, what is not, it makes it very hard for a lot of people to see, to separate information from misinformation or disinformation. That is a big problem that is right now. And the sad part, or the concerning part, is that actually people end up believing false information as true. And even if clarifications come about later on, those clarifications are often not enough, and it might be too little, too late by the time those come out, and people just form opinions based on false information, which they can carry on in their minds for years, and then it can cloud their judgment over people and of things as well. So these were some other news from India, uh, using boiled garlic, or lasun as we call it, for treating the coronavirus, and that's not really so. The WHO clarified that there is no specific prevention and cure yet for coronavirus. So this was in February 1st, a few months ago. But even by that time, they had these news had come out. There is. Let me try and open this. This was a news article on 10th of March, which says a wave of misinformation and rumor on COVID-19 floods our phones, forcing the government to issue an advisory. So this was like one such news this was spreading on WhatsApp. Most urgent, very serious, important information. Ministry of Health emergency notification to the public that the coronavirus influenza outbreak this time is very serious and fatal. And prevention of this method is to keep your throat moist. Do not let your throat dry up. Do not hold your thirst, because once the membrane of the throat is dried, the virus will invade your body within 10 minutes. And drink water to a certain temperature, certain warm temperature, and load up on vitamin C. And there are some things which I hear that children are prone, children actually not prone, that it's highly contagious. That part is true. So the problem is that you have this kind of false information which is mixed with some information which is like that the virus, that it's a contagious disease. So then you do not know what to believe in, what to not believe in, and then people, when they get that, they think this must be true because there's already some panic and fear in our minds, and we tend to believe whatever is coming to us. And then this is like coronavirus is large in size with a cell diameter of 400 to 500 microns, and for this reason, any mask prevents its entry. So the virus doesn't settle in the air, but is grounded, so it is not transmitted by air. So again, here you have washing the hands with soap, washing clothes, being exposed to the sun for 2 hours. So we're staying away from ice cream, and eating cold is important. So you see that there are again some things which are true, which are not true. This ice cream part is not verified at all, and washing hands with soap is a verified part where the virus will die if you wash your hands with soap. So again, it's difficult for people to say what is true or not. So again, UNICEF debunked this, asking people to avoid ice creams and other cold floods recommendations, that these are all false. And then there were some answers that the coronavirus may not show signs of infection for many days. How can one know that he or she is infected? So here it says Taiwan expert provides a simple self-check that we can do every morning. Take a deep breath and hold your breath for more than 10 seconds. If we complete it successfully without coughing, without discomfort, stuffiness, or tightness, it proves that there is no fibrosis in the lungs, basically indicating no infection. So again, it's a serious, excellent advice for Japanese doctors. Again, this is false, this part over here. So there's a whole lot of, again, other kinds of treatments for it, different names of different kinds of pills which could prevent it, which was again false. And they will cite different members, different names over here, and trying to provide some credibility to the news. And there were about homeopathic treatments, Ayurvedic treatments to coronavirus. So if it's done for harmless things, the harmless diseases, it's fine. The problem is that a lot of the times people might believe these treatments and then not seek the right treatment, or not seek hospitalization when they need to, or like just that having any amount of misleading or false information prevents us from acting to a full capacity in ways in which we should be acting in different circumstances in order to prevent the spread of disease, or in any other phenomena as well. So this was a video that I made then, because I was seeing so much of false information spreading. So this was a video that I made in March on March 20th, and I made that in Hindi so that most people could understand it. which is titled "Coronavirus Se Kaise Jeet Sakte Hain." So a lot of people watched that at the time. But my quest was to try to tell people how it actually spreads and how it doesn't. And later on, I was glad that a lockdown was soon imposed, and then people, at least it helped stem the disease for a few months at that point in time. But until that was happening, people were still not taking it seriously enough, and even now it's spreading a lot. So the danger hasn't really gone away. And the last I saw, which was about a few days ago, the number of cases in India was touching 5 lakhs, and the number of cases in the US was touching 25 lakhs. So it's huge. And I believe there has been the single largest day of infection spread, I think it's yesterday or something. So, and that was probably in the US. So the threat hasn't gone down. And we just have to be careful about what information is true versus not true. So on the one hand, we have the pandemic, which is brought about with COVID-19. But on the other hand, we have the infodemic, which is brought about by the false spread of information. So we have to be wary of both. And if we're able to tackle infodemic, we can actually have a more targeted fight against COVID. So coming back to this model that we saw earlier, so we were getting information, but here we're also getting disinformation. So there are these various terms which are there: disinformation, misinformation, and fake news. The primary difference between this term is that these terms is that misinformation is where it is false information which can be spread, but it could be intentional or unintentional. And when we talk about disinformation, often the term the intentional part comes in, whereby different bodies or different either for political purposes or some other purposes, or people for malicious intent, people can spread information deliberately, false information. So the intentionally spreading of false information is termed disinformation, where somebody is planting false information out there. Misinformation is where it could be either deliberate or it could be like intentional or unintentional. So that mixes in misinformation. And fake news is again close to disinformation, where it is false information which is falsely planted deliberately, but it is often in the context of news. So that's where the fake news comes in. So it's a more colloquial term, and disinformation and misinformation are more academic terms for the same thing. So here for misinformation, there's a false connection, misleading content, and then there's another term called malinformation, where the intent to harm is more, which could be for some leaks, some hate speech. It has been used to spread riots in some cases, or to have one community fight with some other community, sometimes incite wars as well. So those kinds of malinformation is also planted sometimes, and we have to be careful of those. And disinformation is sort of a mix of both. And here you have false content, imposter content, manipulated, fabricated, that sort of content is called disinformation content, which is often deliberately planted, and it is also false. And there are other terms which are similar to it, terms such as rumors, urban legend, spam that we get. And there's a term called trolling. Again, there are groups of people who are active on, say, Twitter or Facebook and so on, and whose job is to target people for saying or not saying something. So those are also things that we see a lot. And these are some of the terms to do with the problem. There are other terms to do with the solution that have started coming out, like one term called rebuttal. So rebuttal is where you actually try and counter the false information online. So every time you see something false and you try and counter it, that has been found to be very effective, even if you do not have evidence for the counter, but if you just say that this is false, and often that has an impact upon the spread. So a lot of the people do not try to correct it because of relationships or because you do not want to antagonize someone, but the countering is often seen as effective. So there have been studies on rebuttals and the extent to which they work and different circumstances in which they're able to change the narrative, the false narratives that are there. So again, these are different types of misinformation, again, which have satire or parody, misleading content, imposter content, fabricated content, and so on. And they could be false in different ways. Either the content could be manipulated, and some imagery is deceptive, or the context is false, which means that what happened might be true, but the circumstances in which that happened and the way that is being portrayed, that might be false, or why somebody did something, that reasoning might be false, or there might be false connection of what you see to some other content. So there are different ways in which these false content are created. So how is disinformation generated or misinformation generated? So who are the authors? So it could be some people who are trying to make money, and it could be some people who are just trying to have fun. It could be a satire, like there's a website called The Onion, in which you'll find false news, but then people know that that's false news on the website, so people go there for fun. But that is one reason where there's false information which is written. Sometimes there's a case of untrained journalists who just want to put in the headlines and be one of the earlier ones to bring about a news story. So then you go out then and put information out there without verifying it, and then you just say that according to sources, or then in Hindi news in India, you'd say "sutro ke hawale" or "yahan se suna hai," like those kinds of things where you do not know where that information has come from, but you just put it out there, and sometimes you find a lot of false WhatsApp messages being spread. And when I go and encounter people, they are telling me that where did you see this, or which news website is it from, or where did you get it from? Then the person would say that forwarded as received. Then people sometimes feel this urge to forward things just where they get it, without really taking some time to really see whether what is being spread is true or not. And then there are partisans who want to influence. So here it means that people who want to influence other narratives, people who want to influence the general public, and for some vested interest. It could be for winning elections. It could be for for again trying to win a business deal. It could be for something to do with a certain spread of uh, trying to make some money during the times of the crisis. Let's say whether to do with hand sanitizers or something else. So wherever some kind of false rumors can again lead to panic, and people have done that in different ways. Like for instance, in the US, there was when coronavirus spread, uh, there was a shortage of toilet paper over here, and in India we don't use toilet paper much yet. Uh, but here in the US, that became a huge panic buying thing. So toilet paper just vanished from the shelves from all the supermarkets and all the stores. So there was all of this kind of panic, which can be brought about by false planting information saying that there's going to be shortage of this. So going slightly deeper into why this happens, or how false information might be spread, in some one part of it is to do with the social identity theory. Especially especially happens in terms of political context. So where you have when you think of terms of social identity theory, it is to do with us versus them, or in Hindi, or it would be like or mera tera, right? So or in Punjabi probably it would be the asi tusi. So where you have the separation of me versus you, and when that separation or that divide is created in some sort, right, that leads to a lot of false notions that we have of people. So rather than looking at people as individuals, as human beings, as they are, then people are seen as members of various groups, where you're from, or what's your religion, or what's your race, or what's your city, or what's your country. That is what is planted without like at the very first juncture, right? So a lot of the times whenever something happens, this is there. Now we saw recently that there was a threat of the India-China conflict, and there was this huge forwards about boycotting everything Chinese that happened, right? But one of the things which people didn't understand is that when news of the boycott happens, then firstly a lot of the goods which have been bought from China by Indian people, those goods have been brought from with Indian money. So even if you're trying to boycott China in some way, you are actually boycotting the people and those businessmen, business people who already bought those things. So you're actually harming your own economy in the process. if you do it in the short term without thinking of your repercussions. On the other hand, a lot of your devices and your phones might be using technology that has originated from China, or might have parts from there. So how can you, would you stop using your phones right in the beginning? So the merits of boycotting versus not is a separate merit, but then thinking about what is right versus wrong, what is the best way to deal with the situation, those are separate things. So in any phenomena, in any circumstance, I think trying to think logically what would work versus not, those are different arguments, and a lot of the times we do not really go and put that, and we just try to get onto issues just based on forwards. So here, this is what Rabindranath Tagore he wrote in his book on creative unity. He wrote a series of essays, and he writes about this phenomena of stereotyping that we do to people. And it says that we are in a haste to speak for general types and to overlook individuals. So we can stereotype people based on race, ethnicity, skin color, age, gender, sexual preference, disability, religion, profession, and so on. And that is a false notion because we are not really looking at human beings as they are as human beings, with the same red blood flow flowing in our veins, with the same thoughts and desires. And as we had seen earlier in one of my earlier slides on Professor Brenda Derwin's definition in terms of with the same past history, same present reality, same future dreams and ambitions. And that is the common things that we have as human beings. And even when we think of people of a culture, right, we try to think that somebody is a Hindu or a Muslim or a Sikh or somebody is Jewish or somebody is from the US, somebody is from India. Whenever we try to divide people in that way, one thing we forget is that no person is a sum total of one's culture. We all have different thoughts and emotions, and as we grow and as we interact, as we work, we grow as human beings, and we are all different individuals in our own different ways, even though we might have certain commonalities. So this is what, in terms of fake news and false news, a lot of the time you'll find that the circle that is dividing people is used in a way to spread false information about individuals who are individuals in this manner. So there is this idea of reality versus competing narratives. So one of the reasons why disinformation is created or generated is because there are different narratives. Here I've given very simple examples of, let's say, ethno-cultural nationalism is important, or civic nationalism is important, or other examples saying that science is more important than religion, or religion is more important than science. It could be to do with patriarchy, that girls in fairy tales need a prince to rescue them, that girls do not really need a prince to protect them, and we become stronger by being selfish, we become stronger by sharing. These are just various simple examples I use. There are more examples in different contexts, but even in terms of COVID-19, it could be to do with the COVID-19 spread in a certain way versus not spread in a certain way, that when the summer comes, then the disease will go away, धूप निकलेगी तो बच जाएंगे, that kind of thing. So when you say that when it's hot, like the disease won't spread, and we see that that's really not the case now. It's summer, the peak of summer, and still the virus has been spreading. So there are these various kinds of narratives, and the false news is spread because somebody is trying to counter one form of narrative with another one. So there is this bending of news and social media towards particular narratives. There is the left versus right, and there is the liberal versus conservative. So there are all these various narratives which are trying to play at the same time, and because of which people have reasons to generate false information. And it also leads to polarization. There is the right versus left, and so I'm right and you're the one who's lying, and then the other party will say that no, you are the one that's lying. Right. So here you have the problem is that both the parties then claim to generate misinformation, and then they are then accusing the other party of spreading false news, which is a big issue. So then, what are the implications of this? The one implication is that people actually end up believing disinformation as truth. So that is a big issue. Is that if people were able to separate facts from beliefs, from lies, from opinions, then that was fine. But the problem is that we often are very simplistic when information comes to us, and we just believe whatever it comes. because it is on TV, we think it is true. Because it is because on certain news media, we think it's true. Because it has come on WhatsApp, we think it's true. Because it has come from an uncle, from a friend, from a teacher, we believe it's true. So we find that anybody can actually fall prey to this false information. And most research, this is an old citation since 1992, and even now, all the latest research has shown that people tend to believe in false information. And that happens especially when there's enough repetition. So when you repeat that false information again and again, you for the first time when you hear it, you might doubt it, but it comes from five different sources. Then you see that people can believe that. And especially now, there is such a phenomena that any joke that is shared, right, you find that the same joke is shared by five other people. So any information that is shared, that same information is shared by a lot of other people. And things like certain company has come up with a cure for coronavirus, a certain country has come up with a cure for coronavirus. The malaria drug can be used to cure coronavirus. Coronavirus can be cured with dhupati in the house, with incense sticks, like those kinds of things. So there's a lot of false information that can be spread, and if you get it enough number of times, you might believe that. So how do these spread? So one is that we are now living in what is called a socio-technical society, where we are connected to people, but via technology. So right now, even so, in this talk right now, I'm talking to you, and we all are connected in a way through technology, and we are a part of this socio-technical society that is there. And this was a framework which Isa Yanke had come up with in 2015, and she talks about it as the phase where we are in now. In the first phase was where there were many virtual-based communities, especially around 2005 or so. And in the second phase, there were like clear rules and conventions. There was a network, social networks that started coming in. In the third phase, there were some additional mechanisms which were there, but which were hidden from people. Like how actually do we get the results of Google searches? How do we know that which link is on top and whether to trust that link or not? Like because Google might favor one link over the other. When we go and search for Apple the fruit, Apple on Google, we might get Apple computer and devices and information on that rather than Apple the fruit. So there is a lot of ad-based favoring of things that we see that is showed up on top. But in this fourth phase, which is the most concerning phase right now, is that we are not able to distinguish between what is who are the human beings and what is automated computer bots, and also even for human beings who are the genuine ones and who are trolls out there who are putting information that is there. So where is the genuine information coming from, and where is the information coming from that is actually people are paid to spread rumors and false information, and where is this how is computer technology used to spread the same way in which computer viruses spread, and in a similar manner you can have adware, false advertisements, and false information that is spread to us as well. And as human beings, we are not able to distinguish between this true versus false, between technology versus human being, and that is the society that we are in right now. That is the fourth phase uh, of this socio-technical society, which Yanke calls cross-action spaces. So there is all this communication that has been facilitated through social media, and we have this wide variety of instant messaging tools based in different countries. We have Viber and Kik and Line and Talk and Snapchat and WhatsApp and so on. And in different countries, there are these different messaging apps that are used. So WhatsApp is there in India and in Russia and then South America and so on. Facebook Messenger is there in most of North America, Australia, and some of the countries. Um, and then we have different countries where different kinds of messaging tools are more famous. For instance, in Taiwan, I had friends that tell me that they use Line Messenger more. And if you look at the number of people using these, right? So this is as of July 2019, which is a year ago, and WhatsApp had 1.6 billion users by then. Facebook Messenger had 1.3 billion users. WeChat in China had 1.1 billion users. The QQ Mobile had almost a million users, and so on. So there's a huge number of users. So we see people actually living virtually on these platforms. And So this again is the active users of various social media platforms. For Facebook, it was like 2.3 billion, YouTube around 2 billion, WhatsApp 1.6 billion. Okay, so you can see the reach of all these in terms of the problem in trying to fight it, because any news, any false news, as you can see, it is spread through these, right? It can reach to this huge number of people very quickly. While technology has allowed the democratization of information, it has also allowed misinformation and false information to spread all that rapidly as well. So this is just one internet minute in 2019. So in 1 minute, there were like 18.5 million texts were sent in 60 seconds. 4.5 million videos are watched on YouTube. 390,000 apps downloaded on either Android or on iOS. And so you have all of these kinds of things. That you have like 41.6 million messages that are spread, which are sent on messaging platforms just in 1 minute. And yep. So the problem is we do not know how much of this is true, how much of this is false, how much of this is information versus disinformation from all of these various kinds of information bombardment that is happening to us. So also another reason why disinformation is disseminated also easily is because there is ease of copying, pasting, and sharing. You just need to click on one share button and you can share. You don't need to think much. And misinformation is seeded onto sites to entice into sharing. There's the role of computer bots, which can again put us into a lull, into a false sense of, of, uh, of something which goes into a value system, and we think it's true. We believe on information not because it's true, but because we want to believe in it, because we have a certain bias in our mind and it agrees with our bias. So that's just the question here comes in, is that why do we actually believe in false information? And that is because there is this thing called cognitive bias, which is there in our minds. So the idea of cognitive bias is that we all have this big kind of bias in our minds. It's a systemic error in thinking that affects the decisions and judgments that people make. It's a pattern of deviation from false reality. So what happens is that as we are growing up, right, we grow up with certain stories in our minds. Like one of the things which I've seen, especially in terms of India-Pakistan relations, right, I've often thought about why do Indians hate the Pakistanis so much, and why do the Pakistanis hate the Indians so much? It's because we have this idea of, there was this whole idea of the the huge massacre that happened, right? Especially when Punjab was divided in 1947, and families were divided, and the houses were destroyed. So there is this big, huge trauma from that side, which has been carrying on. And based on that trauma, and because the borders were sealed right after that, there are stories which are there of people from each other. So, for instance, Amritsar and Lahore are two cities which are actually very close distance, as you know, right? From Punjab, like how close these cities are. But if you go to the Wagah border, you see the amount of sort of yeah. I think one of you is unmuted. Could you mute yourself if anybody is unmuted? I could hear some sound, or could the admin mute the person who's talking?
So just a minute, I'll do it. I don't know how he. Yes, I'm really sorry for it.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
So then when you have this kind of propaganda that is spread, right? Then what I did was that I went and looked at the history books. There was this project that happened, and when you look at the history books that are taught to students in India, and when you look at the history books of what is taught to students in Pakistan, you see that for the same events that happened before partition, the kids in Pakistan learn about the same events in a very different manner, and the kids in India learn about the same events in a very different manner, right? And then it is very obvious that by the time that you grow up, you will have a deep-seated bias against each other because of the stories that you have tended to learned to believe in, right? And same thing would happen between different countries in terms of how the Dalai Lama is viewed in India, in Tibet, right? And how we regard him as His Holiness, and as see him as Nobel laureate. And on the same hand, in terms of the narrative from the in China, right? He's seen as a person who's trying to divide the country. He's seen as a spiritist and so on. So there are different narratives that are there, and based on the narrative, then people on that we end up believing in, people see that the you have different ideas of what is true versus not. So those by the time you grow up, we have these deep-seated cognitive biases which are there in our minds based on different events. So because of our biases, then we which we carry when we see information as true versus false, right? When information comes in, we're not able to distinguish true versus false, and we fall very easy prey to information that comes in because of the prejudice that is there in our mind. So confirmation bias is when you have these objective facts and you have like something that conforms to your pre-existing beliefs based on how you've grown up, and this is what you end up seeing. So that is where the bias is there. So even though something is objective, you will not see this part because this does not conform with a belief, so we think that it's false. And just when we see that something that agrees with the belief, only that part we tend to believe. And that is the reason why people end up believing false information. And so when you do that, right, we end up, a lot of things happen. So we have ingrained biases in our minds. We have the news that is coming from media that fits with a bias. And then you have the social media that we're connected with day in and day out, right? Uh, and that is constantly giving us images and texts and videos that conform to our biases. And when all of that comes together, it forms something called an echo chamber in our minds. And the way to understand an echo chamber is, if I were to say it in Hindi, right, it would be Kuएं का मेंढक, which is the story of a frog in a well, right? And this frog in a well meets the frog from the sea, and then asks the frog saying, "Is the sea as big as my well or my pond?" And the frog from the well from the sea says, "No, the sea is very very vast." But then the frog in the well is not able to distinguish between the two, and that is unfortunately what has happened now. So even though we are so connected online and through all the news channels, all the media, but the sources of people that we have, the news sources that we follow, the websites that we follow, the Facebook pages that we follow, right? All of them are done in a way that they conform to our biases. So even though we are connected, we become like the frog in the well, whereby we are living in an echo chamber. So the kind of news sources that we see every day are those that conform to our biases, and we do not see other people's or another point of view, and that is why we fall so easy prey to misinformation and disinformation. So and that gives rise to filter bubbles where we have targeted ads, personal data coming in, and we have people with the same beliefs, same ideas, same information. So that is all the kinds of people that we are connected to, and we live in this bubble, and we are not we don't really get to the other counterpoint of view and try to understand people as to why they might be behaving the way they are behaving. And we do not look at phenomena objectively, but look at it very emotionally and end up making a lot of mistakes in that process. What are the current efforts to fight this disinformation and this phenomena? So different libraries have come up with information literacy programs, with LibGuides, social media like Facebook and all. They've hired some fact-checking teams. Some people are trying to disrupt financial incentives to sharing false news. And Google has come up with some ranking improvements in its web searches, easy reporting of false information, some new tools. Twitter has removed some troll and some fake accounts, and some government's efforts have also come in, like the European Union signed a deal with Facebook, Google, and Twitter in 2018, whereby they came up with a code of practice on disinformation and saying that uh, how the European Union would make sure that the social media is trying to track down on false news. But again, some people are concerned with that because they feel that there might be government role in itself in trying to spread false news in order to try and win elections. So how do you try to keep that objective? So there are different ways and different points of view on this. And there are other initiatives. There's the News Literacy Project, and there is this initiative on fighting fake news from the UK. So as information professionals, what can we do? There was this, as part of my project Oneness World, I had interviewed my outgoing dean, Professor Eileen Abels, and in this interview, she says that by the time people go to the college or the university, it's actually too late. Let me try and pull this out. It'll be I think 2 or 3 minutes. Let's just watch this.
About fake news, right? And you mentioned critical thinking, and I've seen that increasingly more and more people actually believe fake news as true, and I think the need there's a great need to educate people on critical thinking. And how do you think information science professionals can come in trying to bring about this change?
I think that has to happen early in life. So by the time students get to college, I think it's late to unlearn. I think it has to start late elementary school, middle school, because I think that students, and that also has to do with careers. For example, trying to recruit more women into STEM, the science, technology, engineering, math. And that's difficult because by the time, even in high school, they've already made up their minds for other fields. So I think getting to students at a younger and younger age to get them used to looking, questioning information, because again, it's almost like design thinking. Like, do I believe this? Is this what I want to believe? Is this true? And how would I know it's true? This has gone on for a while when you would do a search and you would get a .com, right? Yeah. And you think, oh, wait a minute, that isn't what I was looking for. Government agency, which could give you the answer to this. So even back then, we were told to do quick checks and that way. Now it's gotten much more difficult, particularly with video and film. You can change something very easily. So I think we have to start young and then continue. Wow. But as you say, what studies have shown that you say something to someone, if they want to believe it, they will.
Right.
And also there's a book, about statistics and statistics. Oh, yes. So you could have a group of people around a table reading the same study and understanding it. And that's never going to change.
Yeah, so that was Professor Eileen Abels talking about how you need to start early and educate children in schools, because by the time we grow up, we might form those ingrained biases. So there's a need for critical thinking and action. So critical thinking is this whole phenomena of reasoning, problem solving, evaluating, decision making, analyzing, which has to be inculcated in schools and colleges in order to fight misinformation. So I won't go into a lot of detail because I know that we have almost finished an hour. So I will just talk about some of the very basic principles. So you're educating people on media literacy, on awareness, analysis, reflection, and action. There's a Center for Media Literacy, which has a lot of information on this. They have a 4-step inquiry process. And empowering people on being able to access information from a variety of sources, analyzing and exploring how messages are constructed through social media, evaluating media as explicit and implicit messages like against one's own principles and biases, expressing or creating their own messages using a variety of tools, participating in a global media culture. So all of these must be taught to people, so in order to teach people how to be media literate, and also to understand that all media messages are constructed and there's some creativity which goes in out there. Different people might have different points of views and values, and then most messages are there to gain profit or power. So there is all of these issues which have to be taught to people. And there are questions need to be asked about who created this message, what are the creative techniques used, how might different people understand this message differently, what are the values which are there, and why is this message being sent. Okay. IFLA has this infographic called How to Spot Fake News. That is, IFLA is the Federation for Library Association. So here you have consider the source, click away from the story to investigate the site, its mission, and its contact info. Read beyond. So headlines can be outrageous in an effort to get clicks. So find out what's the whole story, check the author, do a quick check on the author. Are they credible? Are they real? Look for supporting sources, click on those links, determine if the information given actually supports the story, check for the date, is it a joke, check your own biases, and ask the experts. And there are different fact-checking websites to check. Whenever you see something, any claim, it is always best to go and look for these fact-checking websites before you forward it to other people. And there are these based in the US, and these are Indian fact-check websites. There's Alt News, there's Vishwas News, Fact%, Social Media Hoax Slayer. So most of the time, if you just look for the story and search for garlic coronavirus hoax or something, right? or is it true versus false? You can get the right information. Again, you can check whether it's a hoax or not before believing and forwarding to other people. And Wikipedia has this entire list of fact-checking websites based on different countries. So these are some papers I've done on this. This is a 2019 paper on how you can use serendipity and critical thinking to fight fake news. I won't go a lot into it now, but it was how the idea of finding something by chance can be used to see something, whether it is true or false, to distinguish between genuine versus constructed serendipity. This is from a paper, and this is another paper which was recently accepted as a poster for the ACES 2020 annual meeting, where I work with a PhD student and we present a model on fighting disinformation and fake news. So this was the model from that paper, and we'll be submitting the full paper to a journal now. So here again, there's a certain context, and there's the spread of fake news over time. There's the user's filter bubble or echo chamber, and user's own confirmation bias. And these are the people who are the intentions of the people spreading false fake news. They have their algorithms, bots, and social media uses that to deceive. And then the user tries to judge that information based on either ignoring or deciding to use it or spreading it further because of one's own biases. And it can be used to misinform or disinform people. So then which gives rise to information or misinformation or disinformation. And the way to fight it is through various mechanisms, through critical thinking and action, through advocacy for trying to spread false information, because it's actually like a war. The people spreading this false information are very, very powerful and using a technology which can spread to millions of people very quickly. So the effort has to be very concerted. So library and information science people, information professionals, critical thinkers, educators, they all must come together to fight this. So serendipity test is what I had in my paper. Information literacy, media literacy, these are all different mechanisms to fight this false information. So the basic idea then is that you can have information that false information that comes in, we must try and make sense of that information in terms of what is true versus false. And this can be guided through a critical thought and action. So the more critical we are in our sense making, the more we'll be able to see whether information is true versus false. And we must be able to evaluate the reliability of the sources that we seek. And that is one way of understanding and fighting disinformation. Thank you. So I'm ready for your questions now.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal, for your highly informative inputs regarding information which is not correct and how to differentiate between fact and fake, and also how this disinformation is generated, the type of misinformation, and of course the role of library information professionals in fighting disinformation. Your talk was really, really very informative, and I'm very sure that the participants must have been benefited by it. Now, Neha, can you please check up the question answers if there are any? I think I could see some of them.
Ma'am, I can see some of them in one of the chats.
Yeah.
So I'll ask that question. In the meantime, others can ask the questions. Okay, so the question that we have over here is, what tools can we share with our patrons to make sure that information that they share is the correct information?
So what is the first part?
What tools can we share with our patrons to make sure that information shared is correct?
So firstly, one is the fact-checking websites, the list that I showed earlier. So even when you go and search for say fact-checking websites, right? As soon as you do that, and if you go to fact-checking websites, Wikipedia, this is a whole list of fact-checking websites. And this is a great tool, and you can search by different countries. And if we go to India, right?
So are you trying to share your screen in the meantime, because you stopped it?
Sorry, yes, yeah, I stopped sharing, so maybe I should go back to sharing.
Hello.
Okay, screen share. Now we can see that, right? Okay, so
Yes.
I did a search for let me just repeat that. I just did search for fact-checking websites, Wikipedia, and then I got the whole list. And this was a list based on different countries. And if you search, go to India, we find a lot of these news websites. So again, when let's say we go to alt news, right? Here we have this is one example of altnews.in, and it will give you the look at various kinds of news stories, and it will say what is false versus true. Okay, so video from Pakistan shared as patients lying in beds outside hospitals in Hyderabad and Mumbai. Old viral videos, coronavirus infected dead bodies dumped in sea in Mexico. Right? Revati from Karnataka is not IAS topper.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is one thing, and the other thing is that the infographic from IFLA that I shared earlier. So if you say IFLA infographic, so this should be IFLA, sorry, on how to spot fake news. So this infographic is there in different languages that they have. And I think we have an opportunity in India to create this in different languages, there's Bengali over here, but I think that is not in Hindi. So in Hindi, Punjabi, and Gujarati, and Nepali, a lot of the languages we could create this infographic and contribute to it over here.
Okay.
So, and also different libraries have libguides as well.
All right. I think this should work. There is another question. It is, what is the context in information? Is it the need or is it the want?
What is the context in information? So okay, you have actually asked a question which is very deep, and for which I actually had to write a book, and it's about 10 years of research on this. But just to get into a very, very simple thing, right? A need versus want, there are different definitions to information need. Again, Professor Charles Cole, he has a book on information need, Charles Cole Information Need, which again, I referenced that in my book. This is information need. This is a whole book on that. But the basic idea is that need is something which can be brought about in a certain context, based on work, based on as a student, it can be an assignment which a teacher asks us to do, or it could be work based on something that a boss asks to do at work. Want is something which is what we have in our minds, in terms of let me get to it. Oh, there's a very nice paper called by Line it's a 1974 paper of needs, wants. Okay, so draft definitions, information needs, wants. So it's a one-page paper, but which is not very well known, but it's a very nice nice paper on all the differences. But there is information that we want, that we need, which is in our mind. Based on that, there is information that we want, and we go to a computer-based system. And there's information that we demand, which we go and seek, let's say on Google, and we go and search, put a certain query. And there's information that we get in the process in terms of search results. So there are these different nuances. And the context is basically different set of circumstances based on own personality, based on work, based on time, interactions, which might give rise to any of these, which will affect the way we get information and the way we interact with information. So I'm not sure whether I've clarified it, but it's a big topic.
All right. Thank you. I think Professor Singh is in one of the panelists. She might have a question. Ma'am, does she have a question?
Yes. Professor Singh, you can ask the question, please. And Neha, this would be the last question we'll take up.
Yes, ma'am. That was the last question.
Professor Singh, you can ask the question, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Good evening, Dr.
We can hear you, please.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Dr. Agarwal. It was a very good lecture. In fact, I was having confusion in some of the things, but some of the things are clarified, but I still have a little doubt. Because at the initial part of your lecture, you said that misinformation is maybe intentional or unintentional. And so is the case with the disinformation. But what I understand, disinformation is unintentional and disinformation is deliberate and intentional. I mean, I want a clear-cut distinction between these two.
Okay. So
If I can.
yes, let me pull out one of my working papers. This is a paper that I have. We get to a view. I think that I'm just trying to.
Misinformation, we say this is unintentional, distorted. But when we say disinformation, it is fabricated, it is false, it is intentional, it is distorted. Like that, so many terms are being used for disinformation.
This is the part over here. This is a working paper, so you have. It's not very technical. Arrows are not in this place, but this is a simple way to understand it. When there's information, if it is false, if it's yes, right, then it is misinformation. And if it is intentional, yes, then it is disinformation or fake news.
Yeah, that's right. That was my doubt.
Yeah, so that, yeah.
By
That is
mistake, yes, not intentionally. Is it? Am I correct to think about it?
one. Sorry.
If information is unintentionally false, unintentionally, I tell you that lecture will be held at 7 o'clock, but it was supposed to be held at 8 o'clock. So unintentionally, I gave you a wrong information. So that should be misinformation. But when I say intentionally, so as to avoid you to attend the lecture, no, it is at 8 o'clock. Then this is disinformation. This is what I understand.
Correct. Exactly. So when you give a wrong time.
Thank you, sir.
By mistake, then it is misinformation. But when you purposely give the wrong time, then that is disinformation.
Yeah, this is what I was understanding. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So one thing is there. One thing to note is that the misinformation could be both, right? It could be by mistake or by deliberate as well. You don't know which one.
When it is deliberate, then it will become disinformation.
Yes. But disinformation is a subcategory of misinformation, which includes both deliberate and not deliberate. So it's like an umbrella term. Misinformation is like has both deliberate and not, and disinformation is only deliberate. Is only deliberate.
But when we say deliberate, that means that is disinformation.
Yes, but this is a bigger category. Misinformation is a bigger category which includes both.
Yeah, because they should not be used in alternative manner. If we say deliberate, that means they are alternative terms, but they are not. That's why they have been distinguished.
Yes, they have been distinguished. Yes, yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Singh.
Thank you, Professor Singh. Sir, this was a very knowledgeable and insightful, specifically the last part of it, which created the misinformation and disinformation part. Now I will Professor Rupak Chakravarti to give his vote of thanks. Thank you, sir.
Neha, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible, but you're not just now.
Dr. Rupak, just a minute. Dr. Naresh, could you please stop sharing your screen?
Yeah, I will do that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Rupak.
Thank you, Neha. I feel extremely privileged and delighted to offer my sincere thanks to Dr. Naresh Agarwal, Associate Professor, School of Library and Information Science, Simmons University, Boston, USA, for delivering a talk on disinformation generation, dissemination and use, COVID-19 and beyond, and sensitizing the participants about such an important issue for the 21st century and for all times to come. Your talk was quite engaging and captured the attention of all of us who were present today, and the participants really enjoyed your presentation. We appreciate you making time in your busy schedule to speak to us today. It was indeed a pleasure and privilege to listen to you. We all were benefited from it. Thank you for enriching our knowledge through your deeper thoughts and insights. Thank you again for your time. I, on behalf of all of us, extend our sincere thanks to Honorable Vice Chancellor and our Chief Patron, Professor Rajkumar, for motivating us to hold webinars to contemplate and deliberate upon critical issues. My sincere thanks are due to my colleagues and peers, the department staff, university authorities, research scholars, and students for their active support and cooperation. Last, but not the least, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the participants for overwhelming interest and proactive participation. A big thanks to all of you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Dr. Naresh. Thanks a lot for coming on our webinar. It's a great honor. And I also thank all the participants once again. As I said, this was the last webinar. God willing, we'll be meeting you again after a short break. And till then, stay home, stay safe, take care of your family as well as yourself, and consider the this period as an opportunity rather than a threat, so as to enhance your professional development and develop your critical thinking skills to differentiate between facts and fake news, which is very important. So thank you all. Bye bye.